As I prepared to embark on my next contract assignment, I found myself reflecting on the motivations behind my decision to accept this assignment. Primarily, I believe that my desire to move on from my previous relationship played a significant role in my decision. My wife and the remuneration were attractive factors, and I was repeatedly informed that this was a patriotic act that would benefit national security. Indeed, it would benefit the international security of all Western countries more than any other action I could take. Therefore, I had the ideal prerequisites for this position. I work for a corporation that has contracts with Western governments for covert activities. My particular area of expertise is protection. Additionally, I am responsible for analyzing the electronic data of terrorists and other potential enemies to prevent attacks. Despite my relatively young age of 31, I have already obtained a Bachelor of Science degree in Computer Science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in the United States, a Master of Science degree in Infrastructure Defense and International Security from the University of Ottawa in Canada, and a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Strategy and Security from the University of Exeter in the United Kingdom. The work was estimated to last approximately 1 year. This was the estimated time it would take to complete the tasks required in a remote location in British Columbia, Canada. The majority of those employed were American, Canadian, British, and German military personnel. However, there were a few other private contractors. In total, there were approximately 30 employees. Of these, 20 had higher education and significant experience in security matters. In the context of the fight against terrorism, the technological equipment was equipped with the latest technology, given that the entire program was secret. There were no married women workers, and even children accompanied them. Uniforms were not worn. The facility, which was known to the neighbors as WAS 100, was believed to be intended for Bitcoin mining, although this was never confirmed. In my observation, no one investigated the facility further. They would have noted that the facility consumed minimal electricity, similar to Bitcoin mining, and generated minimal noise. However, literature about the facility suggested that the reason for the facility's relative silence was due to advanced soundproofing technology that had never been used before. All workers worked in shifts, ensuring a consistent workforce of at least 7. The majority of the workers were affable, and there were often 10 or 12 families on site at a time. There was no attempt to exclude single individuals, regardless of gender. After approximately a month, I became accustomed to the work and perceived it as worthwhile. We had already prevented one terrorist attack in the UK. However, I observed that the majority of the 14 wives present appeared to be disinterested, despite their presence. A social club and gym for sports and those with children and some without children provided assistance at the local elementary school, which was understaffed. Despite the evening cinema and parties, they had no opportunity to work or gain significant satisfaction. There was one aspect of this situation that I found particularly challenging. In fact, that is putting it mildly. There was one aspect of this situation that was particularly distressing. There was a single woman who attracted my attention. The single women who worked with us were highly competent and intelligent, yet I was not interested in them because they were plain or downright ugly. I was very friendly with them, but I did not experience any sexual attraction to them. Among approximately 1,000 townspeople, there was also not a single unmarried woman who scored more than 5 points on a 10-point scale. The available evidence suggests that all the decent and attractive single women have relocated to Vancouver or another major city. Some have even married local men due to the remoteness of the location and the length of the work day. However, there was no feasible way to obtain the opportunity to travel unless one had 4 days off in a row, which rarely occurred given my circumstances with my former spouse. My wife and the necessity for camaraderie among my colleagues. I had no intention of pursuing romantic relationships with their wives. None of the wives wore revealing clothing, as this was not the norm in the local culture. However, during the first month, I did observe half of them at the gym when I exercised, and the ones I saw had attractive physiques. In fact, I felt embarrassed that I was attracted to them. I attempted to maintain contact with the 14 wives. Based on my observations, would estimate that all of them had faces that were a 7 or higher on a scale of 10 and bodies that were as good as could be determined, given the lack of available information on bikini competitions. At least 8 weeks into my work in a remote part of British Columbia, I had a very good day. I was almost single. handedly responsible for investigating a terrorist attack in Toronto that was swiftly thwarted by Canadian authorities. Upon arriving at my modest detached residence at approximately 10 p.m., for reasons that remain unclear, the lack of sexual activity had a pronounced effect on my emotional state. I accessed one of my email accounts and, in addition to the usual unsolicited messages and brief notes from acquaintances, discovered an email with an unusual name. If the subject line mysterious local __ had not piqued my interest, I would have assumed that this was typical spam. However, I clicked on the email, aware that doing so would expose my computer to the risk of virus infection. The email's author was evidently aware of this risk, yet chose to take it anyway. The email's content was presented in the body of the message and included 6 photographs. Each photograph depicted a naked woman with a face mask and matching blonde wig. The accompanying text was straightforward and included the following: local mystery, __, available for the right man. Must be single and know how to please a woman. Sexual satisfaction must be mutual. The following opportunities are available next week for __, girls in photos. AF price to be agreed upon prior to service. Our girls do not show their faces and. The instructions were clear: do not reveal their identity, do not flirt, and do not engage in lengthy conversation. However, they do enjoy sexual intercourse. Complete the questionnaire, providing no names. This was followed by photographs with dates and times. The only information required in the form was the applicant's address, price range, letter, date and time of contact, and desired amount of time. I spent at least half an hour examining the photos and contemplating the potential implications of this proposition. Was it a hoax? A practical joke? A potential disaster? Or a way to resolve my personal issues? The photographs were relatively small, and I found the women in photographs A and F to have body types of 9 to 10, while the women in photographs B, C, and E had body figures of 8 to 9. In other words, they all suited my needs to the highest degree. In photograph D, I specified 100 hours as the price range and 2 hours as the amount of time. Had the woman in photograph D been anywhere near as attractive and interested as she seemed, I probably would have paid $1. The remuneration was $0 an hour. I was financially compensated at a rate that was commensurate with my needs and preferences. Consequently, the value of money was not a significant factor in my decision-making process. The following morning, upon waking and checking my computer, I was surprised to see that the __ in photo was available for 2 hours on April 14 from 10 p. The advertisement stated that the __ girl would be available for sexual intercourse from 10 p.m. to midnight on Wednesday night for a fee of $100 per hour, with the stipulation that condoms must be used. The advertisement also required that the individual accept the terms by clicking on a designated icon. I read the advertisement twice and then clicked on the icon, eager to see if it was a legitimate offer. However, I was unable to concentrate at work on Wednesday due to my curiosity about the advertisement and the __ girl. I had numerous questions, including where the girl had come from, whether she truly resembled her photo, and whether this was a prank. I finally managed to focus on my work and returned home at 8 p.m. To shower, clean the house, including changing the sheets on my bed, and take a brief nap. I was unable to comprehend the reality of the situation when I was approached by an unidentified individual at 9:58. I observed the exterior of my residence without activating the exterior overhead lighting and perceived a figure that appeared to be a woman, approximately 5 feet 6 inches tall, clad in a cape with what seemed to be long-sleeved sweatpants beneath it. The woman promptly entered the premises, immediately drawing the curtains across the windows. The woman then removed her clothing, revealing a body that closely resembled that of photo D. While her mask was not aesthetically pleasing, it was not particularly disturbing. Her blonde wig seemed to be attached securely, and her voice, which was mechanically altered, was calm and composed. She requested that he place $200 in her fanny pack and then escort her to his bedroom. He complied with these instructions. Upon entering the bedroom, the woman promptly disrobed. She then gazed at me from the waist down for approximately 15 to 20 seconds before inquiring about the availability of Magnum condoms. I promptly responded in the affirmative, offering a box of 12 pieces. Due to the constraints of her mask, kissing was not an option. However, she swiftly embraced me, her arms encircling my torso. It was not long before we transitioned from a standing position to a supine one, lying on my clean sheets. Dee was highly active, and we both lay there panting, exhausted. Despite the relatively rapid pace of our coupling, our bodies were glistening with sweat. It was, I reflected, an amazing experience. I smiled and inquired as to whether the $100 an hour fee was commensurate with the quality of the service provided. "I can only afford $100, I replied, smiling. Her eyes danced with excitement as she proposed, "If you promise not to look me in the eye, I will remove my mask to prepare for the second round." This was the best offer I had received in recent years. She removed the condom from me, ensuring she was stimulating my penis, tied it off, and threw it into the wastebasket in my room. "Caitlin Clark," I said, comparing her skillful shot to the highest-scoring women's college basketball player in the United States. She giggled at this assessment. She then positioned me on my back and instructed me to look straight up, away from her. Despite being unable to see, I was able to discern her lifting her mask slightly. Before long, I emitted a moan and became fully aroused. The speed of my recovery was remarkable, likely due to the extended period of time since my last sexual encounter. I rolled over. I requested that she remove herself from my person. I was concerned that something was amiss, and my suspicions were confirmed when I heard Dee say, "Oh, ___." I was able to discern the nature of her comment. I had not applied a condom, and I expressed my regret. I must note that, despite my initial intention to engage in sexual intercourse without a condom, the experience was nevertheless quite enjoyable. Despite her discomfort with her altered voice, we engaged in a pleasant conversation in bed. Subsequently, she resumed massaging me from the waist down. To our mutual astonishment, my friend regained consciousness. Was this indication that he was prepared for further sexual activity? She giggled, although it was difficult to discern whether this was a genuine expression of mirth. "He expressed a strong interest in you," I observed, reaching for another condom. She advised me to forget about the Magnum, suggesting that we should capitalize on the situation. It was 12, at approximately 10:30 p.m., we emerged from our shared shower and she proceeded to dress. I regret to inform you that our activities did not conclude until after 12 a.m. I attempted to convey this to her, but I am uncertain as to whether she comprehended my message. She appeared to find my situation amusing. In fact, she stated that our encounter was the most enjoyable she had experienced in years. She further proposed that, should I choose to utilize her services again, should obtain an STD report. She offered her services for a fee of $50 per hour, suggesting that we could meet as often as we desired without the use of condoms. I gazed intently into her eyes and stated, "I would like to kiss your lips." She responded by stroking my cheek for the first time since I had arrived. Upon returning to British Columbia, I retired for the night with a profound sense of satisfaction and happiness. In my mind, visions of our exceptional sexual relationship danced in a playful manner. This was due to the fact that my schedule and the opportunities they had noted in their revised weekly email coincided. Each of these opportunities was unique, yet each was enjoyable and sensual in its own way. What they all had in common was sexual tension, a sentiment that Dee had expressed to me when she departed from my residence. I set my price at $50 per hour with sessions lasting 2 hours, and there were no objections. All 6 individuals expressed satisfaction with this arrangement. After 2 weeks of dating others, I finally identified a time that worked for Dee. I made a reservation immediately and scheduled a test for sexually transmitted diseases after my last encounter with the last of the 5 individuals. My second encounter with Dee was even more enjoyable than the first, which I had considered unlikely. The sexual experience was exceptional. I felt a profound sense of connection with her, and I believe she felt similarly towards me. Over the subsequent 4 months, my life underwent a significant transformation. I experienced a notable shift from what I had perceived to be a prolonged period of sexual disinterest during my adult years to a level of sexual fulfillment I had never before encountered. I had at least 3 encounters a week with one woman or another, and as many as possible with Dee, given our schedules. The precise date and reason for this shift are unclear to me, but I suddenly felt compelled to gain insight into the identity of these individuals. I believe it was after Dee's departure one night that I came to recognize the possibility of love. Despite never having seen her face or heard her voice, I came to the conclusion that I needed to find out who they were. I felt like a bloodhound at every party or event I went to, scrutinizing all the women there. I gave a gift, usually jewelry, to each woman as they left my house. The gifts I gave to those whom Dee had introduced to me were expensive, in the hope that they might wear them to an event. I even used my computer skills to hack into the HR information of all the employees and their wives. I identified C as the attractive Debbie Ritchie, the wife of one of my colleagues. I observed her at the gym, where her body type was readily apparent. Her demeanor when we conversed also indicated a friendly and cheerful disposition, despite our limited acquaintance outside of my bedroom. Additionally, she did not notice me glancing at her as she departed the gym in street clothes and one of the bracelets I had gifted her, worn on her left wrist. I did not inform Debbie of my knowledge of her identity. She was my discovery, which led me to believe that all 6 mystery women were the wives of my colleagues or perhaps the wives of the townspeople. What drove me crazy was that I couldn't really identify the other 5 except Debbie, especially since she had huge breasts and especially Dee, since by then I knew every inch of her body better than any other woman in my life. After 2 months of fruitless searching, I decided to just enjoy life and forget about it. I only had about a month left on my contract and I was assigned another task when I learned through informal channels that 2 of my colleagues were experiencing marital challenges. As previously stated, the wives' lives were not straightforward, as they had limited responsibilities. I postulated that the mysterious lewds were created specifically for titillation. Soon after I became aware of the 2 cases of marital discord, I engaged in another session with Dee. She had always been renowned for her unparalleled sexual fervor, but this time she surpassed herself. After the 2-hour session, after an hour-long session, during which we had been contracted to engage in sexual intercourse, she sat me down on the sofa in my living room. She began calling me by name, which was the only time I could remember. "I know you're leaving in about a month. What are your plans after this?" I responded, "I'm going to take a 2-week vacation. I intend to take a vacation in Hawaii and subsequently commence my next project in Washington, D.C. "Why do you inquire?" After a lengthy pause, he exhaled and stated, "I perceive a connection with you, and I hypothesize that you also perceive a connection with me. I am interested in vacationing with you, and if our relationship progresses, I would like to accompany you to Washington. I have set aside the funds you initially provided for my flight to Hawaii. As previously stated, we will assess the situation and determine the best course of action." "Are you married?" "Affirmative, but my marriage. My relationship with you has prompted me to recognize the need for a more dynamic and fulfilling life. I have come to realize that my current situation lacks the necessary excitement and passion. I am uncertain if I can maintain my current relationship with my husband for another 6 months. If I were to accompany you to Hawaii, it would undoubtedly lead to the dissolution of my marriage." I was initially indifferent to the prospect of a relationship with Dee, but I allowed my feelings to cloud my judgment. I was deeply in love with her, and she misinterpreted my hesitation as a negative emotion. I was obliged to continue, as I understood that you needed to know who I was before you could seriously consider my offer. Therefore, I allowed Dee to remove her wig and mask. This process took approximately 2 minutes, during which I was able to recognize her as Carolyn Lton, the wife of one of my colleagues. She has a pleasant appearance and dark hair that flows down her neck almost to her shoulders. Upon recognizing her, I was initially perplexed as to why I had not previously discerned her identity. Despite our limited acquaintance outside the bedroom, I held a positive regard for Carolyn. I expressed my admiration, noting that she was attractive. I inquired about her plans to leave her husband, suggesting that she accompany me to Hawaii, though I would bear the financial burden. She rose to sit on my lap, and we kissed. The first kiss was brief and affectionate, the second was prolonged and ardent, and the third was loving. We discussed the future and agreed that it would be prudent to keep our plans private, except for our closest friend. She proposed that we send her most essential belongings, with the exception of the garments and jewelry that she intended to take with her to Hawaii, to my company's Washington, D.C. office for storage. This was a minor decision. This was a relatively mundane occurrence within the context of our organization. I merely informed them that these were my personal belongings. We scheduled a follow-up session a week prior to my departure, during which I informed her that I would cease utilizing the services of other unidentified individuals. She then made a rather unexpected remark, expressing her desire to be alone with me once we reached Hawaii.